Spooky Nation? How is everyone doing? We are back. We got some new videos we're getting ready to watch. So, you know what time it is. It's time to put on something comfy, cuddle up with someone special, turn the lights down low, and let's get spooky. First video is from Mr. Nightmares, and it is titled 3 Disturbing True Warehouse Horror Stories. Let's get started.
I was assigned as a security guard with the midnight shift at a very large Omaha warehouse when I was a young man. This building was mainly used for storage and it was huge. We as security personnel were tasked with hitting several stations inside this building on the night shift, and this required that we did a lot of walking. There would always be 2 personnel assigned to the warehouse at night, one patrolling the outside perimeter in a car, and one inside the warehouse on foot. Being outside, sitting in the comfort of a car was obviously the more desirable of the two. I was working a Wednesday night. I was about half an hour into my shift. I would start the shifts walking around for about an hour, just surveilling the place before sitting down in one of the security offices. This room had some low-budget, ancient camera system that at the time was impressive technology, but it only had 2 screens because there were only 2 cameras in the entire...
He means 2 potatoes. When they said low budget, it means they had 2 potatoes up there, and that was it.
Our warehouse, one in the northeast corner and one in the southwest corner. That's why we couldn't just sit on our butts in the security office our entire shifts and had to actually patrol the place. This was a shared warehouse for some tech companies, and a lot of expensive equipment was held here, hence why 2 security guards would have to be there every single night. The warehouse layout was similar to that of a regular grocery store. There were like 10 to 15 aisles, and one intersecting aisle that cuts between the other 10 to 15 in the middle. I was still making my initial rounds around the place when I saw all the way down at the end of the aisle I was in, something at the end section. It was like this white thing that kind of resembled the shape of a head, and it was poking out from behind the end section. Mind you, it was so far away that all I could make from it was this white-looking object. I elevated my slow stroll to a moderately quick speed walk, and halfway through the aisle, the white thing disappeared behind the tower of boxes. This confirmed my fear that it was a person, and that I wasn't alone in there. I now ran to the end of the aisle, hoping to see the other night guard walking around or something. As I stood in the southwest corner of this giant warehouse, I looked up at the camera in the corner, and I was pointing in the direction of the thing I just saw. I looked in that direction, and there it was again, at maybe the 7th aisle, that white thing I saw earlier. Well, now it was a lot closer, and I could make it out to be someone's face, as I feared. But it wasn't the other security guard. It was this extremely pale, ghoulish-looking face. They once again slowly hid their face behind the tower of boxes. I walkie-talkied the other guard on duty, and he radioed back that he was in the car by the back section of the parking lot. He said, "Roger that."
See, I would have stopped, turned around, and walked out the building right there, because, I don't know. On my luck, I'd be walking down through there, all of a sudden a box full of refrigerators on top of me. No. No.
That he'd be here in 5. Getting off the phone with him, I was nervous to approach the aisle that I saw the person's head. Even though this is exactly what a security guard's purpose and job is, you never actually expect or anticipate seeing any action. I took a deep breath and ran to that aisle and stopped at the end of it to look down it. The person wasn't in sight. I figured they must have ran for it. So I ran halfway down hoping to catch up to them, but I stopped when I smelt this horrible putrid odor. It smelled like a dead, rotting carcass. I followed the scent until it became overwhelming, and I found the source of it. It was coming from this big wooden box that was different from the rest of the boxes. I pulled the lid off the box, and inside was a dead body laying in a pool of blood. The most shocking part of it was that it was missing a head. I walkie-talkied to the other security guard again, and yelled at him to call the police and report a dead body in the warehouse. I said this all while running as fast as I could to the back exit of the warehouse, struggling to get enough air. I threw up the second I made it out the door. I ran to the other security guard's car and sat in there with him, gasping for air. He was still on the phone with the police, so I took the phone and told them whatever the other security guy didn't. Given the nature of the situation, they sent like 5 or 6 cop cars and basically had the entire place surrounded. The body was loaded into an ambulance, and for a good chunk of the night, police were in the warehouse doing forensic work. Perhaps the weirdest part of all of this was that when trying to go back to the video footage captured from the night before, the footage cut out for about 3 hours in the middle of the night. There was no explanation for this happening. I've thought about this night for almost my entire life, basically.
No.
I don't believe in ghosts or anything, but I don't really have an explanation for this. I've thought about some far-fetched possibilities, though.
So, here's my question. Was the headless person murdered in the building, or was they murdered somewhere else and brought there? And if they was murdered someone else and brought there, who brought them there? And where is the video footage? I won't trust on. I won't go back there. Nope.
Like that whoever the murderer was in the warehouse that night and was holding up the severed head of that body, hence why it looks so pale and ghoulish. In fact, it gave me chills just now thinking about it again.
I won't go back. You couldn't pay me. Even though they was paying you. Nope.
Several years ago, 2 friends and I heard from a mutual friend about this creepy abandoned warehouse or furniture store that was only a few miles from my house. One night while on a drive, the 3 of us decided to check it out. We parked at a Walgreens a few hundred yards from the warehouse and started walking towards it. As we got closer, my friend, I'll call him Jim, kinda chickened out and stayed back while me and my other friend, I'll call Mark, continued on. As we approached the right side of the building, it became very obvious that this place had been abandoned for a very long time. The front entrance was boarded up, and there were vines and ivy growing all over the building. Our mutual friend said that the only way in was through a busted-in wall in the back. We went around back, and sure enough, there was a broken-in narrow section of wall we could get in through. We stepped in, and it was completely dark. We couldn't see our hands in front of our faces, so we turned on the flashlights on our phones and looked around. There was trash and debris everywhere on the concrete floors. We were in what appeared to be the main room of the old store, and it was huge. An entire football field could probably fit in this room. We could even hear an echo when we talked. We started looking along the walls, which were covered in graffiti. The graffiti was littered with what must have been gang symbols as well as profanity, as you would expect. What was really unsettling, though, was that as we moved further along the back wall, the graffiti was getting more and more disturbing. One of them read, "Kill yourself tonight." Then the graffiti was getting satanic. There were tons of inverted crosses, pentagrams, 666s, and violent scenes depicted. While this stuff was creepy enough, it wasn't the worst of what we saw. Towards the end of the building, there were some steps leading to smaller rooms. As we shone our lights on the steps, we saw a large, dry pool of...
Would have turned around, start walking away. I would not have went up the steps. You could not have paid me to go up those steps. Nope. Nothing.
what was probably blood all over the steps. This deterred us from exploring the smaller rooms beyond, so we headed to the left side of the room. As we were walking, our lights caught something hanging from the ceiling. We got closer and saw what it was. It was a noose, still hanging from one of the rafters. It became very obvious that the people that come to this place use it for very evil purposes. After that, we decided we'd spend enough time in there and headed for the hole in the wall we entered through. We got outside and saw that there was another, smaller building/warehouse behind the main one. Despite the freaky things we saw inside, we were still curious and decided to check this one out too.
Oh my God,
The
why?
thing that was very odd was that there was
Why? Yeah, I've seen the news. Potentially blood all over steps. They're telling you to pray to God, and you're like, let's go in the other building. But let's don't.
a small room in the front of the warehouse that had no doors, only one window. Inside was a large inverted cross hanging from the decrepit ceiling. We came to the left side of the warehouse where the large garage-style entrance was. This building was similar to the first one. It was one large empty room with tons of trash everywhere. There was more disturbing graffiti. However, there were these holes at the base of the walls that were really odd looking. We shined our lights down them but couldn't see the bottom. What were these for? We had seen enough at this point and headed back outside. It was then that my friend Mark got a call from Jim. As he was talking to Jim, his face suddenly changed to a downright horrified expression. I said, "What's wrong?" What he said next sent a chill down my spine. "Someone else is here," he said. Before we could even...
Alright, I would have kicked his legs out from underneath him and ran. Because it's not about who's the fastest, it's about who you knock over and leave behind.
turned to run, a white truck peeled around the corner at an alarming speed, heading right towards us. We started booking it towards my car, and as we got around the other back corner of the building, we saw another black truck parked alongside. But we kept running as fast as we could, and thankfully the three of us made it back to my car. We got in and peeled out of there. I don't know what those guys in the trucks were there for, or why they chased after us, but based on what we saw in those buildings, it wasn't anything good.
I think it's going to sacrifice you. It was.
Thankfully, we never found out, and we never returned to that place. In my mid-20s, I used to be a party planner and event coordinator. I was basically in charge of throwing dope parties for this record label group. I'd have to rent out venues for a night or weekends, which would allow us to host our events in these places. Usually we wouldn't pay until after the event, and the landlord or owner of whatever property we were using would take a cut of the profits. There was this one time that my group rented this big warehouse for an entire weekend, and we would be hosting parties Friday and Saturday night. Once the place was rented out, I had to do a lot of setting up, which included setting up tables for bottle service, setting up portable bars, and a DJ stand. A lot of work would go into these kinds of pop-up venues, but they were always extremely profitable. My buddy Jack, who was also on the event planning team, was helping me on the Wednesday before the party weekend. He drove a truck full of equipment to the empty parking lot that the warehouse sat in. I was having trouble figuring out how to get the power to a certain part of the warehouse activated. I looked for any kind of electrical panel or circuit breaker box, but I was having trouble finding one. I gave the building owner I dealt with a call, and he picked up almost right away. His name's Carter. He told me exactly where to go for the electrical panel that would turn on the specific lights I was looking for. He directed me to a door that had an exit sign on top of it, but it wasn't on. Through this door, I was in a very short, very narrow space with a door on one side which I presume led to the outside, and then a half flight of stairs on the other side. I was supposed to go down this half flight of stairs, which led to another tight space with a couple doors. This room was hard to explain without just seeing it for yourself. I'm 6'4", so I had to bend down a little bit just so my head wouldn't hit the ceiling. That's how cramped it was down there. This level had very dim nightlight kind of lights hung on the ceiling. Dim but enough light to navigate just fine.
Emergency lights, because there's no power.
I found the electrical panel, and Carter told me exactly which switches to flip. Then I shut the panel door and turned the key to lock it, even though he told me to just leave the key in the lock. I thanked him and our call ended. I heard a loud and obvious buzzing sound that would be going off in spasms. I followed the sound of it to a door leading to a pitch-black room. Pulling the door open was hard as it scraped against the concrete floor. There was this red light in the top corner of the room that synchronized with the buzzing sound. When the buzzing stopped, the light would also turn off. I was trying to figure out what it was, but it didn't make sense. I stepped deeper into the room and noticed whenever I moved, the light would turn on and the buzzing would sound. When I stood still, it stopped. I don't know why, but I was creeped out, so I went back to the doorway of the room. I took one more look inside, and the red light turned on again, lighting up the room with this eerie red glow. I decided to call Carter and tell him about the potential problem with the light and the buzzing. He told me calmly that the light was a motion sensor, and the buzzing was because that one in the basement was busted. I asked what he meant by motion sensor, and he explained that there's at least one in every room in the building, as it's part of the security system. I looked back into the room, and the light was still on. I asked what could be setting it off in there, and he said he had no idea. And that's when I spotted it. There was someone. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman because of the long, disheveled hair, sitting in one corner of this room, half hidden behind a pile of old boxes. Their eyes were the most noticeable feature because of how goddamn wide they were open. The mouth was like a half smile, and and they were moving their arm in a manner that was as if to tell me to come here. I know it took me a few seconds to describe this person just now, but I was literally screaming at the sight of them in under a second. I slammed that door shut and ran back up the stairs and out that exit door. I told Carter we were leaving and not using the warehouse anymore. I didn't ask any more questions after that. I didn't care, it was his problem. I yelled at Jack to get everything he could back into the truck. We collected our stuff as quickly as possible, loaded the truck back up, and left. I didn't even bother locking the door to the warehouse. I just wanted to be far away from there. I still today don't know what to make of it. The Carter guy seems so weirdly calm about my telling him about a deranged-looking person in the basement of his warehouse. Thinking back, that light was probably going off because of that person sitting in the corner waving me over, or doing whatever the hell he or she was doing with their arm. It was a truly nightmare-inducing, horrible experience.
Probably some creepy homeless person. Come here, man. Let's sniff some poop. Oh, God. It's pretty good. Let's do some llama art. This one has a creepy deep web story too.
I was 26 years old, and I was unemployed. Feeling unfulfilled by the monotony of a job life, I decided I would try my hand at working from home. So my days and nights comprised me of surfing the internet for any jobs I could get. I was a big procrastinator, so more often than not I'd stray away and waste time doing other things. One day, I came across talk about the deep web while on Reddit. I felt amused by the people talking about it as if it was something so scary, and decided I'd look into it. It was stupid of me to go on it in the first place, but I made it even sillier by deciding to check it out late at night. It was about 2 a.m. and I came across a website where you could chat with someone anonymously. The person I got was a woman. She was in her early 20s and very pretty. She sat with her head in her hands, looking playful.
Deep web ain't no joke. Like, something you don't even need to be on, like, in the middle of the day, surrounded by people. There's some creepy stuff on there, y'all. No.
Into the webcam while batting her eyes. I had no desire to turn my camera on and started our chat, thinking that while I didn't come across anything scary, I could befriend this pretty girl. It sounded like a better deal anyway. She told me to turn the camera on, but I ignored that request and tried to get her to talk. She finally did after some prodding, but I noticed how guarded she was. I also noticed how after every message I sent, her eyes would look off camera, either to her side or somewhere behind her computer. After a while, it started getting annoying, so I asked her if someone else was there with her.
I want to see you first.
She said. Up until now, I'd been chatting while she'd answered my questions verbally. I'm not that curious.
Don't be scared.
She said, laughing, this time looking behind the laptop again and making a face that seemed to indicate she was laughing at my expense, with someone else. This is getting boring. It feels like I'm not just talking to you.
That's because you're not. You're talking to all of us.
Who else is there?
Turn your camera on.
Is this a joke?
Turn it on.
Okay, I'll be leaving now.
Turn on the camera.
Her laughter was almost piercing by now. There was nothing humorous about
That's
the
not
situation,
creepy at
yet she
all.
threw her head back with riotous laughter. I'd had enough and moved the cursor over to turn the chat box off when I saw the cursor had jammed. The only thing that was working was the chat box, and I still had access to the keyboard.
Turn the camera on, sweetie.
Her gumdrop-filled voice was louder than before, and I moved my gaze up to see her smiling toothfully at the camera. Her face still beautiful, but the smile completely fake. My computer's crashed. I can't see the screen. Sorry. I lied. I didn't want her to know I had no option but to chat. Her screen flashed before going blank. There was nothing there but a black screen. I felt relieved, thinking that at least I didn't need to talk to her while I tried to figure out what happened to the screen. Just then, a chat message popped up.
Open the damn camera, you...
The aggressiveness in the message frightened
What?
me. Now, the fact that I couldn't see her face while she typed this made me feel nervous. I didn't dare reply back, but then the cursor moved. I watched shell-shocked as the cursor twirled around the screen.
Open the camera now.
I still didn't make a move. There was no way anything good would be waiting for me if
Unplug the computer. Power the thing down. You don't know. No, I didn't know. Unplug, power, throw it out the window. Go out there, take its mangled wreckage and set it on fire. Take that and cut it up with a chainsaw and bury it in the bottom of a lake. It's your only option.
I did what she asked. The screen began flickering, as if a virus was causing the computer to writhe in agony.
Do you want me to find you?
My heart raced. Could it be possible she knew where I was? I started typing. Please stop bothering me.
Then turn on the fucking camera.
By this point, I thought she was some kind of sadist who got her kicks by scaring unassuming people in chat rooms. So I obliged and turned the webcam on. I saw my frightened face staring into the screen. Judging by my face, my attempts at looking tough were painfully unsuccessful. I asked around for the girl looking straight into the camera, telling her I did what she wanted and to stop hacking into my computer. There were several seconds of silence. I kept my stare directed to the little box that showed her camera feed, but it was pitch black. I motioned into the camera in confusion, feeling as if she was messing with me now. Then I saw another message.
Look here.
After a few seconds of staring at those words, I looked back at her camera, but my computer instantly malfunctioned, and I received another message.
Look here. Don't look up.
The chat was filled with nonsensical gibberish. She typed with such ferocious speed, my screen whirled away with her constant messages. I couldn't understand what was going on, but I didn't look up. My patience ran thin, and I wrote back, "What is this supposed to mean?" Her response came. I read only the letters in bold and shuddered. I looked back into her webcam and I fell back into my chair, my eyes widening. She was back there, only her face looked completely demented. She had a savage expression, devoid of emotion, but her eyes were almost popping out of their sockets, and she was huffing as if she had extreme amounts of pent-up rage.
Feeling something. I don't know what she's on, but she is on something. I mean, that's creepy.
The way she looked directly into the camera made me feel she despised me with all of her being. There was no amusement there anymore. Her camera went blank again. Then the chat popped up. My heart stopped again. For a split second, there had been the same blackness, only for the lights to come back on. She wasn't alone anymore. There was a man next to her with a black mask on. He made no movements other than look into the camera like the girl. The girl's neck creaked to her side. It looked like it was causing her pain, and then the lights went out again. The chat resumed.
Up.
This time, I screamed in fright and fell off my chair. There was another man with them now. He was standing next to the girl with the original one on the other side. This man had the same mask on, but his hands were grasping the girl's shoulders. Even with the subpar quality of the webcam, I could see the force with which the man dug his hands into the girl. It looked like he could rip her in two. The girl, however, had a huge grin on her face. Her eyes were mad with glee, or so it looked. Her teeth were perfectly lined up as her mouth spread into that toothy grin, but I could see she was in pain. Even with the smallest sign of her smile fading, the man clenched his hands even tighter than before, which made her smile even wider. All three of them were shaking, as if it was extremely cold where they were. After a couple seconds, I realized they were shuddering, like trying to hold back laughter.
What are you laughing at?
I yelled into the screen. They didn't answer, and continued to tremor with concealed hilarity.
What is so damn funny?
I bellowed. They stopped shaking. Within a couple seconds, the screen went black again. When it turned back on, the man no longer grasped the girl's shoulder, neither was she smiling. All three pointed into the camera. Upon a closer look, I understood that they weren't pointing at me. They were pointing behind me. I didn't need to look back, I could see myself in the webcam. There was someone peeking from behind me. It was another man in a mask, and according to what I saw on my webcam, he was with me in my room, right behind me. I turned around quickly, but saw nothing where I had seen him in the webcam. I turned back towards the screen and, to my bewilderment, saw a third man in the girl's chat box. It was the same man I had just seen standing in my room. Now, all three had their hands on the girl and were gripping tight. The girl wasn't laughing anymore. She had a look of utter devastation. A tear was dropping from her eye, but it wasn't just a tear. It was blood trickling down her eye socket. She then mouthed the words, "Help me," and the next second she screamed as if her lungs were being ripped off as the screen went black. I immediately got up and pulled the plug out of my computer and backed out of the room.
First thing I done, and no, like I said, I would have unplugged it, threw out the window, set it on fire, cut it up with the chainsaw, and buried it in the bottom of the ocean. No. No.
For a couple seconds, I swear I heard her screams, even though the computer was unplugged. The room went quiet, but I was too devastated to stay there and ran out of my house despite it being 3 a.m. I caught a cab and went over to my friends, who had to talk me down for an hour before I could be calmed. I returned back to my house with my friend a day later. Everything was the same, and after thoroughly checking around the house, we concluded that there was no one there, nor was there a sign of anyone ever having broken in. I've never gone back to the deep web. My friend suggested it might have been some prank by computer hackers, but the way that girl shrieked, the terror she had on her face, it convinced me she had been a victim herself. I had wondered if I had stayed on for longer, if I would have become a victim too. Could those men have found me? Was there really someone in the room with me? There was nothing I could do, because there was nothing concrete to report to the police. What I did do was throw the computer out and buy a new one. There was no way I could even open it back up after what happened.
That was generally creepy as all get up. No lie. Oh, yeah. Alright. Let's see. What should we do now? Let's do a little life of luxury.
Think he's gonna be super weird? Dude, it doesn't matter if he's weird. What matters is if he's putting her in harm. Hi, nice to meet you.
Guys. Nice to meet you. I don't feel safe.
Wake up, she's screaming, dude. Let's go. Let's go.
Hello, Lux Army. Let's get some LOLs in the comments. So for this episode, we received an email from a 19-year-old girl named Charlotte. Charlotte recently moved into a new house, and she's concerned that her new roommate, Derek, might be up to something. Charlotte says that Derek acts friendly most of the time, but can get a little bit creepy, and that she hears strange noises from his room at night. When Charlotte asked Derek what happened to the last roommate that lived there, Derek said that she disappeared. So Charlotte invited us to stay with her for a couple days to try to find out what's going on. So today we're gonna head out to her apartment and see what this weekend holds. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Man, I wish I could use Animoji like all my friends at school, but I only have an Android.
First link in the description. So what's up, dude? Are you excited for this weekend? Yeah, I guess I'm pretty excited. Charlotte seemed pretty nice on the phone, and I'm excited to see what this Derek guy is like. Think he's gonna be super weird? Dude, it doesn't matter if he's weird. What matters is if he's putting her in harm.
Is this the place?
Yeah, I think this is it.
All right, dude, get excited. It's gonna be a fun weekend.
I'm excited. All right, let's go.
All right, let's go.
All right, so this is it. This is the house. It's a
Yeah.
pretty nice place, huh?
Think so?
All right, let's knock on this door. Hi.
Hey, oh my gosh, it's so
Hi,
good
nice to meet you.
guys. Nice to meet you. Do-
Chester?
Wow, this is a pretty nice place.
Yeah, I just moved in. Do you guys want to come in?
Sure, yeah, thanks. Yeah, let's talk about this. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the last roommate that disappeared?
I actually forgot to tell you this. So when I got here, he said that she was all moved out, but all of her stuff was still here. Like literally everything, like her phone, her clothes, like everything.
So can you tell us a little bit about your roommate, Derek?
Shh, shh. You gotta talk quieter.
What?
So you said in your email that you've been hearing weird noises from his room at night.
Yeah.
So what do these noises sound like?
Hold on.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Nice to meet you, Parker.
Derek.
Derek, nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you guys. Are you guys friends with Charlie?
Yeah, sort of. You're calling her Charlie, is that not Charlotte?
It's my little nickname for her.
Yeah.
So, why are you guys filming this?
It's just something for school.
Yeah, hi, Derek, do you mind like giving us a little bit to talk? Not to be rude, but we're kind of like in conversation.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about those noises you've been hearing.
I've heard yelling, some squishing noise, all kinds of things. And whenever I knock on his door to ask him what's going on, he just pretends like he doesn't know.
Squishing noise. You don't want to know what he is doing. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. No.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Yeah,
this
that's
is a
pretty
friendly
weird.
Guy. Do you think you could show us a room that we'll be staying in?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Cool, let's go.
Here's the bed.
Oh, cool. Only one bed.
Who's sleeping on the bed?
Then right behind you is the bedroom.
No sink?
Oh,
That's alright, that's alright.
If you guys need anything, just let me know.
Yeah, so we're just gonna chill out here. When Derek leaves tonight, we're gonna set up the cameras, try to capture what's going on. But we're good for now. We can just chill out and wait.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks.
I need to be on the southern facing side of the house. Dude, he's leaving now.
He's leaving? Are you sure?
Yeah, Derek's leaving now.
Okay. He's leaving on set of the cameras.
Okay.
Okay, so one in the kitchen. We already have a camera in our room, so... Okay, so we just need to put the camera in Charlotte's room. Hey, sorry if we woke you up. Can we put a camera in your room?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we just need to put this camera in Derek's room.
Yo, what's that? Sit down on his bed.
Dude, whatever. Just ignore it. Let's go. Just do it.
4.5 hours later.
Derek came home about an hour ago, so he's in his room now, we think. We got all the cameras going. If we hear any weird noises during the night, we need to wake each other up.
Okay, sounds good.
Alright, let's go to bed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all.
Alright, so we just woke up. It's about 6:40 in the morning. Let's go check on Charlotte and show her the footage.
Okay.
Excited to see this. Okay, so all these cameras feed to this app I have on my computer. So let's take a look at this footage. Okay, so this is Chester's and my bedroom from last night. Here's yours. And here's Derek's. Let's keep scrolling through this footage.
Did he sleep at all? Dude, he's just sitting on his bed.
What's he doing?
I'll keep scrolling through.
Dude, look at him. He's brushing that doll's hair.
It looks like he did this all night. Oh look, he's getting up.
Oh my god, where's he going? He was in my room? Oh my god, what's he doing?
Scrolling through this, it looks like he was just watching you for hours.
I'm really freaked out, guys. I don't feel safe.
Do you want us to put a lock on your door?
I guess.
Alright, so we got this lock on the door. Looks pretty good.
Okay.
The lock is pretty good. We installed it ourselves.
Hi guys.
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good morning. Do you want any coffee?
No, I'm good, dude. Thanks.
Toast?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I'm fine. Thanks.
Alright.
How'd you sleep?
I slept like a baby.
Like a baby?
Yeah, what about you guys? How did you sleep?
Slept pretty well.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go make some coffee. Why are you so grumpy today?
Just act normally today. We're gonna record tonight to see if we find anything else.
Are you guys sure you don't want any coffee?
He is really polite. Like, to probably be in a St. Axe murder, he is the nicest insane axe murderer I have ever seen. Hey, guys, want some coffee, some toast, make you some oatmeal, rub your feet. Do you sleep good? Oh, yeah. I like. Just no worries. Oh god. Yes, he's gonna politely watch you sleep.
Wake up. She's screaming, dude. Let's go.
Hold on, what?
Let's go. Let's go.
Where?
No! What are you doing? Get out!
No.
Leave.
I'm seeing Charlotte.
Why are you coming in her room at night?
Just to watch and see her.
To watch what, dude? Go back to your room.
Don't get in my face, dude.
Dude, leave. This isn't your room. Get out.
I like to protect her, okay?
You're not protecting anyone. Just leave.
You're coming in my house. I need you to get out.
Let's go. We need to
I
go.
don't like that you're in here. It's
go.
really hurting.
Okay, well, she's not living here anymore.
What? I'm gonna fucking kill you! Oh my god!
Dude, just get out.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this video.
Oh god. I do like their stuff. It's great. It's great. Oh god. Alright. What now? What now? Let's see. Let's This is going to be Sir Spooks. This scary video will give you nightmares.
Hello everyone, my name is Sir Spooks, and today we'll take a look at a mysterious video that was sent to me, which shows an episode of a paranormal investigation show created by a channel that disappeared about 13 years ago, and the subsequent cryptic messages sent by an unknown person. I recently received a message from a Twitter account known as Jess is Sir.
This case usually off-grid, looking for info about the YouTubers, the paranormal paranoids who disappeared from the internet about 13 years ago. DM me for any leads.
Searching. When she was about 12 years old, she was a big fan of the YouTube channel known as the Paranormal Paranoids. Recently though, she's been looking into their disappearance on the internet and created the account in order to find other fans of the show.
Yeah, Fred, Velma, Daphne,
On May
Shaggy.
20th, 2021, she tweeted, starting a new thread for this, but I created this account to ask the internet if anyone remembers the amateur ghost hunting group Paranormal Paranoids that were on YouTube around 2005 to 2008-ish. My friends don't even remember them, so thread. She then goes on to explain how it seemed like they suddenly disappeared. She only recently remembered them, when her parents showed up with a
They completely disappeared one day like they never existed, and that drove 12-year-old me crazy since I was literally obsessed with them. I eventually forgot about them until my mom and dad showed up with this box of old stuff from my childhood room since they are moving. Oh, childhood memories.
box full of stuff from her childhood, containing things such as her old laptop, an old radio, and some pre-2008 era films. The most exciting thing, however,
It's got her
was
old
her
Pornhub
laptop.
account on it.
Wondering if it was still in working condition, and wondering what nostalgic things might be on there, she opened it only to find a picture of the paranormal.
So I booted up my old laptop, wanted to see what was on there, her old Pornhub account. And I found this old picture of the group. It brought back all the memories. That was when I was a total loner and only watched X-Files and weird stuff like Paranormal Paranoids on YouTube.
Paranoids group. She goes on to explain the dynamic of the group, and it's easy to see why a 12-year-old X-Files fan could get hooked by the idea of an amateur ghost hunting show. Jess explains, the group was made up of Riley, Peter, Laura, and David. They just go on adventures to the creepiest places in Ohio, and since I'm also from the Midwest, I felt like I was on the adventure with them. Riley, the blonde one, was basically my idol since she was sort of the leader.
That's Fred.
Even though Jess only has a few followers on Twitter, someone almost immediately began answering her in her search for information on the group. The user, looking for Para7, replied, I remember them. Were you a fan too? You could say that. Do you have any theories where they might have gone? It's so hard to find information. No answer. At first, she thought she'd met another fan of the show, but it quickly went in a weird direction. While they didn't explain further in this Twitter thread, they continually kept answering Jess, sending her cryptic messages at some points, while neglecting to answer on others. What's even weirder is the fact that the user somehow had videos ready, but wouldn't mention where they'd got them from. This wasn't the only instance where the mysterious person sent her lost footage, and it soon got to the point where it seemed extremely strange. The stranger seems to be infatuated with one of the group's members, specifically Riley. At one point, Riley's sister, Mia, is mentioned on Twitter.
I don't even remember this one. This is really great stuff. Thank you. I remember Riley mentioning Maya. Maybe someone knows her sister. She has to know what happened.
It might be a coincidence, but the day before, the stranger put up a photo of a tree with the markings of an R and an M carved into it. It could indicate that the stranger may personally have known them more than they care to admit on Twitter. How else could they procure these personal pieces of information and memorabilia? Jess has posted all of the stranger's videos to her YouTube channel, but it seems to be an ongoing thing, so we can't yet know where this all leads. Alongside the mysterious clips, she has also posted a complete episode of the show. She mentions on Twitter that she'd burned old episodes onto CDs, and actually managed to find one in playable condition. This is what it contained.
Pretty good intro, bro.
The paranormal paranoids investigate the world beyond because there are some things we can't explain. But sometimes the mysteries turn out to be a hoax, and other times they're just inside your brain. Peter, Laura, David, Riley. The paranormal paranoids, the paranormal paranoids, the paranormal paranoids.
That was oh, I like that. That was so corny. Oh, jeez. I like that. That was, yeah.
The video begins with the group entering a wooded area known as the Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. They're looking for the specific tree where a young woman named Mary Talbot supposedly hung herself in 1994.
David, do you know where it is?
Really?
David knows things.
I'm glad you guys believe in me.
Here we have mounds of dirt.
You don't say.
As far as I know, the mounds aren't haunted.
Said it's some burial ground around here.
So digging. I don't think it's there, Peter.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, I literally
I'm not coming
cannot get out of the mud right now. Jesus Christ.
Did you lose both your shoes?
Yes, I lost my shoes.
They're gone forever now. They belong to
I'm
this
not
place.
saving them, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if I'm gonna go around. I didn't think I believed in quicksand.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm walking on the grass.
Come on. There you go. That's one.
I cannot believe it.
To most people, this forest is the same as any, but to the people of Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, who remember what occurred in 1994, these woods hold a sinister story. A young married couple was on a hike when they came across the body of Mary Talbot. This is where it happened. No one ever learned why Mary took her own life. There were plenty of theories, but nothing concrete ever came forward. Many were confused over the public nature of the suicide. This is a popular hiking spot. Lots of passerby come through. She must have known that. It was almost as if she wanted to be found, wanted to be seen. Rest in peace, Mary Talbot. David, are you getting shots of the tree?
Great, man. Get the f over here.
Okay.
All right,
ready?
what are we doing?
Smiling, right?
Smile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheese. All right,
Silly? Yeah?
Sure. Okay, all right.
Obviously?
All right.
Okay,
Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's
Angels.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Fantastic.
There's not. We have the wrong number. Tree cart, right? Shopping cart?
All right, let's dance and move. There we go.
It looks like they have fun,
Yeah,
though.
that's what I'm talking about.
Looks like they really enjoy what they do. They have to, though. With an intro like that, they have to be peppy and upbeat. I was a mix between Ghost Adventures and Power Rangers. Yeah.
Cool. You guys get out of that tree?
Sir, you want my jacket?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. You need it.
I don't need a jacket.
The video primarily shows the 4 ghost hunters walking to the spot and walking back again. But after looking through the footage, something strange was found.
I didn't even notice none of that. That's pretty good. All right. Let's go with Mr. Bell.
This story is totally unbelievable, it's shocking, it's a whole bunch of things, but what you'll remember from this story is the twist at the very end. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format,
He is going to M. Night Shyamalan us again. He's very good at that.
June 25th, 1950, the Korean War broke out between the North Koreans and the South Koreans. Just 2 days after this war had begun, the United States formally entered the conflict by sending troops to aid the South Koreans. Shortly after this, the United States enacted a military draft. A military draft is the forced enlistment of civilians into the military. In the Korean War, the way Americans were chosen was in a lottery, and if their name was called, they would have to stop whatever they were doing in the civilian world and immediately go serve their country. And if they refused, they would go to jail. An 18-year-old high school dropout nicknamed Samson was living with his family in Seattle, Washington when he found out he had been drafted. While military service was not something Samson was considering for his future, he accepted his fate with grace, and before long, he was making his way to Fort Ord in Northern California to begin his military training. But after training, when Samson was now officially a soldier in the army, he was not sent to Korea to fight in the war. Instead, he was ordered to stay at Fort Ord and be the lifeguard for their pool. It's unclear how Sampson felt about this, but regardless, he did his duty, and he stayed at this pool and he minded the folks who went swimming, and then at night and on the weekends, he would earn some extra cash by being a bouncer at a local bar. A year later, Sampson was still working at the Fort Ord pool when he decided to take some time off and go back home to Seattle and see his family and see his girlfriend. As a military member, Sampson was able to fly for free on any military flight so long as he was in uniform. And so Sampson packed up his things, he threw on his uniform, and he made his way over to the Fort Ord airport, where he hopped on a small military plane and he flew to Seattle. A few days later, on September 30th, 1951, Sampson said goodbye to his family and to his girlfriend, and then he put his uniform back on and made his way to the Seattle airport. When he got there, he saw there was only one military plane that was flying from Seattle all the way down to Fort Ord, and this plane was a World War II era dive bomber that only had enough space for one person, the pilot. Sampson had to get back to Fort Ord that night because the following day he had work, and in the Army you can't just not show up for work. But Sampson didn't have enough money to buy a civilian plane ticket to take a civilian flight down to Fort Ord, so he was in a tough spot. And so he approaches this pilot of this dive bomber plane, and he says, hey, can I just cram into your radar compartment in the back of your plane? And the pilot, whose name was Anderson, immediately said, no, that's a terrible idea. It's not meant for passengers. It's barely big enough to fit inside of. You could get badly hurt in there. But Sampson was adamant that he had to get back that night, that he'd be in so much trouble if he didn't. And he kind of appealed to Anderson and said, look, you're in the military. You get it. I have to get back there tonight.
Come on, bro.
Can you please make an exception and just let me hitch a ride in the back of your plane? And so finally, against his better judgment, Anderson caves and he says, okay.
Yeah, that's where everything goes downhill. Guaranteed. Poor Sampson.
Sampson, you can come with me. And so a little bit before 4 p.m. that afternoon, Sampson eagerly went around to the side of the plane. He opened up a side hatch and he crawled inside of this very tight radar compartment. And once he was tucked up inside, Anderson walked around and he closed the hatch behind him. And then Anderson got in the cockpit and began preparing the plane for takeoff. A few minutes later, the pair was careening down the runway, and right as the plane began to experience lift and was going up into the air, the side hatch of the radar compartment where Sampson was suddenly flew open. The big issue with this now open door in the radar compartment was not that Sampson, like in the movies, would get sucked out this door out to his death, although if he wasn't careful, he totally could fall out of the door. No, the real problem with this now open door had to do with oxygen levels. At their cruising altitude,
I didn't think about that. Yeah, they pump oxygen into the planes that once you get so high up, it's like being in mountain climbing, you gotta get your body used to it. Once you get so far up in the atmosphere, there's very little oxygen, so you have to pump in extra oxygen to keep you from passing out. Oh, ooh, poor Sampson. He's gonna die.
Where the majority of their flight would be spent, there wasn't enough oxygen in the air to sustain human life. And so as soon as Anderson powered up that plane and began preparing it for takeoff, he began pumping oxygen into the cockpit and also into the radar compartment space. This is done specifically to compensate for the lack of oxygen up at that cruising altitude. But with Sampson's door now wide open, all that extra oxygen that was coming into that space to keep him alive is now just being sucked right out the door into the atmosphere, which meant if Sampson couldn't find a way to shut that door, he would eventually pass out and suffocate to death. Sampson, who was fully aware of this fact, immediately jumped into action by anchoring his feet and legs around the stanchion in the middle of this compartment space, and once he was fairly secure, he began extending his upper body out of the plane to try to grab onto the handle to try to shut it. But once he was holding onto that door handle, he's now halfway out of the plane, he could not get it to shut. The wind was so strong it was pinning the door open. And so for the next several minutes, Sampson desperately is trying to get this door shut, but it's not working. And so eventually he retreated back into the plane and went all the way to the very back of the radar compartment.
Man's got balls on him though. Nah. Could you imagine hanging out of an airplane with no shoe on, trying to shut a door? Oh, God. That's scary.
apartment space and tucked himself up behind some equipment. Because this was not an area where passengers were supposed to be, there was no way to communicate with the pilot. He could not tell Anderson that he was dying back here. And so he just sat there and prayed. While Samson was dealing with this open door crisis, Anderson was dealing with a crisis of his own. At some point after takeoff, he looked down at his gauges and he realized a terrible mistake had been made. There wasn't enough fuel to get to Fort Ord, and where he was discovering it, where he was out over the water, there wasn't enough fuel to even turn around and go back to Seattle. And so Anderson grabs his radio and he tries to call out to these surrounding airports to see if there's anywhere he can just emergency land this plane, but all he hears is silence. It would turn out his radio equipment just happened to fail right at this moment. And what also happened to fail right at that moment was Anderson's oxygen supply. It had nothing to do with Samson and the open door. Anderson just also suddenly was without oxygen. And so Anderson knew he had to get to a lower altitude as fast as possible because he would eventually pass out and crash the plane. And so he went into a very steep dive and began going down and realized he needed to try to land this plane in the ocean now. There was no way he could get to an airport. And so he's burning down towards the water, and as they're coming down in altitude, there was more oxygen in the air. And so Samson, who had eventually passed out from a lack of oxygen, is suddenly revived with all this additional oxygen as they're going down. And so
wake up in time to crash. That's horrible. Oh, that's
so
horrible.
Samson comes to and he looks and the door is still wide open and all he can see is the Pacific Ocean burning up at him. He only had a few seconds to grab onto the stanchion in the middle of the space he's in before they impacted the water. Miraculously, Samson survived the impact, but immediately he was faced with another life and death situation. Because this door was wide open, the freezing cold water began pouring inside, flooding the space. And so Samson tried to swim his way out, but the power of this water coming in was too strong. And so he had to wait until the space completely flooded before he swam out and then swam up to the surface. Once he got to the surface, he's looking around and the water's incredibly choppy and it's very foggy. He can barely see anything. He's looking around for Anderson, not really sure what happened to him, and he looks down the plane towards the front of the plane and he sees Anderson climbing out of the cockpit. He looks badly beaten up, but he's alive. He's okay. And so Samson yells to him and the two men link up and they're able to pull two life rafts out of the plane. And so both men, they get into each of their rafts right as this plane sinks down below the surface. And so Anderson and Samson begin looking around wondering what they're going to do, but it's so foggy they can't see land in any direction. They can barely see 10 feet away from themselves. And so Anderson thought they landed maybe 2 or 3 miles off the coast of California, but they weren't really sure. So Anderson pulled out his compass, he looked east and said, let's just start paddling. The men had crashed about 2 miles off the coast of Point Reyes, California, which is this big protected shoreline that's about 150 miles north of Fort Ord. And this particular stretch of water that these two men had found themselves in was a known breeding ground for great white sharks. So the two men, they got their compass and they're trying to swim as fast as they can to the east, but they're not seeing any land. The fog hasn't let up at all. And then eventually it got dark. And as soon as it got dark, the water got choppier and choppier until at one point, Samson actually was launched out of his raft into the water. He turned around and saw his raft, but it was being pulled away by a current faster than he could swim to it. And so Samson yells out for Anderson, who sees him in the water. Anderson tries his best to paddle over and save Samson, but the current was too strong. And before long, Samson watched as Anderson just disappeared into the fog. Now, Samson was all alone in the middle of the night. He couldn't see anything. There's no land anywhere. He doesn't have the compass. Anderson had the compass, so he has no idea which direction is what. He's in a shark breeding ground, and now he doesn't have his life raft. And so Samson did the only thing he could do.
You know how they say, how the frying pan into the fire? That's this situation right here.
Which was pick a direction that he believed was east and start swimming. And so Samson is swimming in this pitch black water. He can't see anything around him. And all he's probably thinking about is how any minute now, I'm going to run out of energy and I'm going to sink down and I'm going to drown, or I'm going to get attacked by sharks, or some combination of the two. But miraculously, after about an hour of swimming in some direction, he broke through the fog and he saw way off in the distance was a light on what looked like dry land. And so he has this sudden burst of energy and he swims as hard and as fast as he possibly can. A couple of times he gets pulled under by rip currents and he nearly drowns, but eventually he gets to the sandy shores of Point Reyes. It's believed he swam approximately 1 or 2 miles after being dumped out of the boat. As he was pulling himself out of the water and collapsed on the beach, he had given...
Has to be exhausted. Has to be. There's
everything to that swim. Had he been in the water for even a few more minutes, it's very likely he would have drowned. Unable to stand from pure exhaustion, Samson just began slowly crawling up the beach towards this light he had seen as he was swimming. And it would turn out this light was on the outside of this building that was owned by a radio station. And so Samson is crawling and periodically puking out seawater. And finally, after about 30 or 45 minutes, he gets to the steps of this building. He crawls up the steps and he pounds on the door. And by this point, he's hypothermic, he's in shock. He's about to die if he doesn't get any help. And luckily, there's someone inside of this building. They open it up, they see Samson. They don't know what's going on, but they pick him up, they pull him inside, they wrap him in a blanket, and they try to ask him, what happened? What's going on? Why are you here? But Samson was too cold to even speak, so he just sat there and shook. And so finally, this employee just called the Coast Guard that had a station very close to where they were. And a few minutes later, the Coast Guard shows up, they take Samson, and they rush him to their station house where they were able to give him medical treatment, which saved his life. It was also at this Coast Guard station where Samson was reunited with Anderson, who had also managed to make his way to shore alive. Samson would go on to serve for 2 more years in the Army. The entire time was spent as a lifeguard at the Fort Ord Pool. Then in 1953, after the Korean War ended, Samson's mandatory service came to an end and he was honorably discharged. Samson would go on to become one of the most successful and well-known actors and producers of all time. He has won hundreds of big awards, including 4 Academy Awards and 4 Golden Globe Awards.
Really?
Samson's real name is Clint Eastwood. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comment section what it is and where you found it, so give us the timestamp. And if you're the first to do that, we'll pin you at the top of the comment section.
Oh, this is so Dirty Harry. The good, the bad, the ugly. Heck yeah. Oh, Dirty Harry. Wow. Alright, I think we have time for one more. It's gotta be a short one, though. Gotta be short. One more Llama Arts. But they're relatively short. Let's see. This one is Llama Arts, a Manchester horror story.
This is a story about how I became a 30-year-old male who is secretly afraid to be outside after dark in cities. I live in Manchester, in the UK, and it's widely regarded as a relatively safe and multicultural city. Good transport, friendly locals, and plenty to do. I don't live there anymore, but I'm proud to be from there, and I will always have one hometown. This took place in 2016, and at the time I was working for a company that hired me to work on contracts. So 4, 6, sometimes even 8 months abroad, and then 2 or 3 months at home. So when I was home, I made sure to see family and friends as much as possible, whether it be meeting and playing video games, a drink at the bar, playing sports, or traveling together. The incident took place when I was on my way home after a night out drinking, and I write this 4 years on since it happened. I still have PTSD from the incident, and think of this as my way of telling you all to be careful out there, as well as this being an opportunity for me to talk about it. Those who know Manchester know about its quite frankly amazing tram system. It's affordable and easy to understand. There is a tram station right near to my apartment, just outside the city center. I had been back in the country for 7 days and had arranged to meet my friends in the city for a reunion of sorts, drinking, dancing, and catching up. You know how that goes. It's important to note at this point that At the time, there was a homeless gentleman that adopted the tram stop near my apartment as his own. He would always sit at the top of the stairs leading down to the platform, and whenever I used the tram, I would always see him without fail. It had even gotten to the point where we exchanged a friendly nod to each other every time. But this time, on the way to the city to meet my friends, everything changed. On any normal occasion, he would be sitting under the shelter at the top of the stairs, either asking passersby for money or just saying hello. But as I approached the top of the stairs, around 20 to 30 meters away, I saw him, and he stood up straight, almost too straight, with his chest out, just glaring right at me in the most menacing way. His brow was furrowed, his jaw was clenched, and he was breathing heavily. I could see his chest rising up and down with speed from now 20 meters away. Maybe drugs was involved or something had angered him.
Sniffing his own poo.
Why me? I thought. Now, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm 6 foot and athletic, but I don't believe violence is the answer in any case. I'm not easily intimidated at all, but the way this guy looked at me sent shivers down my spine. I immediately looked down after we made eye contact, and then looked ahead, because I thought maybe it was just a glance from him. Then, I looked back at him again, when I was even closer and his eyes were still on me. This time they were wide, and he looked unhinged like he was ready to attack. I looked away again because at this point I felt I had to ready and prepare myself for a potential confrontation with this guy. When I was close to him, I looked back again, and he took a step forward, watching my every move, looking me up and down as if he was assessing my weaknesses. As I approached the top of the staircase, he was turning his head as I moved. I knew that this was not normal behavior from him, or anyone for that matter. I thought I have to address this, because he's freaking me out, so I stopped, met his gaze, and pointed my body towards him just before I went down the stairs, and I calmly asked him, "Is everything okay, mate? Can I help you with something?" Nothing. I got absolutely nothing as he looked into my eyes. I could hear his fast breathing at this point through his nose, and he looked like he was having some sort of episode, so I moved on and quickly went down the stairs. What the fuck has gotten into this guy? I thought. I almost felt bad for him. At the halfway point of the stairs, I looked behind me to see him standing at the top, looking down, directly at me again. I could only describe the look he gave me as bone-chilling. He looked like a predator that had found his prey. I kept moving as I didn't know if this guy had a weapon or what his intentions were at this point. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I turned around again, and to my shock, he had walked 4 to 5 steps down, still standing and glaring at me with the same disturbed and angered look. He was clearly stalking me
Just
now.
gonna knock him out.
I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, and sweat was forming on my forehead and palms. Luckily for me, the platform was very busy, and the tram I needed to catch was approaching, so I quickly immersed myself amongst the crowd of people getting onto the tram and found a seat. Wouldn't you know it, when I sat down and the tram started moving, I looked back towards the bottom of the staircase, and there he was, just glaring at me with this horrific, sinister grin on his face. I did not feel safe. I felt targeted. His head moved and followed the tram, looking me in the eyes as we moved away. The entire journey to the city I felt on edge, anxious, and all I could do was think about that guy. When I eventually got there, my friends automatically picked up on the fact that I seemed a little off, so I told them about the situation I was just in, which they just dismissed, saying that I was probably just being paranoid and that he'll be gone by the time I get back home. I agreed with them because I realized that he is usually only there during the daytime, so I enjoyed the night. We all drank, laughed, and even met some cute girls. Before I knew it, I was hammered, to the point where I had to look at my phone with one eye closed. My balance was off, and I felt like I could throw.
You know it's bad when you get to that point. That way, you know, it goes from you seeing 5 things to just seeing 2 now.
Up at any second. It was around midnight and time to go home, so I said goodbye to my friends and arranged to meet the next weekend due to the success of this one. The last tram was approaching and I had to run drunk as a skunk to make it in time. I got onto the tram, and when I got a seat and caught my breath, I remembered what happened at the tram station on the way back to the city. I felt sober suddenly, and I was honestly on the verge of an anxiety attack, until I remembered that I never usually see the guy late at night, which was comforting for the remainder of my journey. The tram arrived at my stop and I got off. I just stood there for a second, surveying my surroundings. The platform was empty. The skies were clear, although dark. The air was warm, and the only sounds were the nearby traffic and the tram leaving the platform. I remember it like it was yesterday. I looked towards the bottom of the staircase in the platform leading to the street, and I took a deep breath. I approached the stairs and looked towards the top. Much to my relief, he wasn't there. Stage 1 over. Stage 2 was easy. Get to my building, which was about 150 meters away from the stairs. As I slowly walked up the stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible, my heart was in my throat. All I could think about was what I would do if he was there. But I was drunk and I didn't think fast enough. I arrived at the top and looked to my left, and what do you know? He's there. And as soon as I look at him, his head snaps, and he's looking me in the eyes with the same terrifying look, almost foaming at the mouth like he's won a prize. He stands up slowly and turns to face his body towards me. At this point, I realized how tall he was. About 6'2", huge gray and dirty beard, almost skinny with a lean body type. I was almost pissing myself. So to break the tension, I just nodded at him and told him, "Good night, mate," and I walked on quickly towards my apartment. I suddenly heard a deep, hoarse voice say, "You got any spare change?" Loud and obnoxious. Which I turned and replied quickly whilst I was walking backwards. "No, mate, sorry. Have a good night, though," and walked on again. I was free, and my anxiety was disappearing. All I was thinking about was getting to my building as fast as possible. Then, I heard what felt like the loudest, most aggressive voice ever. "Hey!" I stopped, and I turned around so fast because he made me jump and scared me. He was holding a knife, and it was pointed directly towards me. The nightmare scenario was playing out now, and I held my breath as he walked slowly towards me. I was definitely sober now, and I weighed up the options. I run and take a risk, or I start to negotiate with him. I thought, there is an ATM nearby, I can get some money and just go home. He was around 5 meters away, with the knife pointing towards me. I wasn't going to let myself die like this. He then said, "I'm going to ask you again. Do you have any spare change?" I couldn't tell whether I wanted to throw up or cry, but I had to get out of this situation. No one else was around that I could see or hear, and it was on me to get out of this. I said to him, "Look, there is an ATM." I couldn't even finish my sentence, because he had thrown the knife at my face. It hit me just above my eye, cutting me on my eyebrow, taking a chunk of skin clean off, and there was blood in my eye, partially blinding me, and there was blood all over my face almost immediately. I was blinded and breathless. I fell to one knee in shock, and I barely saw the knife in front of me on the ground through my drunken, shocked, and partially blinded state. So I reached for it as fast as I could. But it was too late. He had already picked it up and tackled me to the ground. I yelled a guttural and deep shout for help down the street as he tackled me, holding the knife, a sound I didn't know I was capable of making, but the adrenaline was coursing through my veins now. He had the knife in his right hand and plunged it down towards my face. and the only thing I could do was put my hand in the way. I screamed in pain as the guy was on top of me. He had put the knife clean through my hand, in between the knuckles of my middle and index fingers to be specific. I started to push back, and realizing how much stronger I was than him. The tip of the blade was about 5 inches from my face, and then a miracle happened. I heard the voices of a group of people yelling.
Hey, stop!
Accompanied with their fast-running feet towards me on the tarmac. The guy's grip on the knife was weak suddenly, and he looked behind himself, clearly seeing the group approaching. They shouted again, yelling,
Get off him!
And he jumped off of me. Unfortunately for me, he took the knife with him and ripped it out of my hands as he jumped to his feet and swiftly ran into the nearby woods. There were 5 people in total who came to my rescue. 2 of them initially chased the guy into the woods before I shouted,
No, he has a knife!
And hearing me say this, they let him go and started to call the police. This incident changed me for the better, and I wake up every day appreciating everything in my life. After the incident, I was rushed to the hospital and I had surgery to reattach the nerves in my hand 2 days later. The guy who attacked me is in prison now for attempted murder. The police showed after the incident within 5 minutes, and full credit to them. They found the guy hiding in the woods, still holding the knife behind a tree, and they managed to subdue and arrest him on the spot. He was on a cocktail of drugs, and he openly admitted to the police that he fully intended to kill me if he had the opportunity. But this incident was simultaneously the best and worst thing that ever happened to me. The best, because I appreciate life so much more now. I talk to those I love every single day. All life is precious. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and we are all mortal. Stay safe and alert, and do not waste a moment, as you don't know who's going to be waiting around the corner.
Pretty good. Pretty good. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Alright, and if you did enjoy it, think about subscribing and hitting that bell, because when you do, you're going to get to see more spooky, scary. I don't even know what the hell it was. We'll put it in the demented category. Yeah. Alright. Hit that bell, because it's going to let you know when this beautiful face and more spooky, creepy, terrifying, horrifying, demented, deluded, strange, weird, creepy stories are coming your way. Yeah. Alright. I hope you all had fun. I know I did. And as always, be good to each other. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.